beneath the evening star.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to another installment of Morning Coffee and Daily Bread. And today we're continuing on into the book of Job. Going into the second chapter. It's a short chapter, much like most of the book of Job. The chapters are very short and sweet. So we're going to go ahead and start here in chapter 2, give you a recap, talking about the servant Job, the servant of God, and about how Satan said, take everything from Job and watch him curse you to your face. But Job lost all of his livestock. He lost his children. But yet he tore his robe, shaved his head, and covered himself in ashes. And he said, "Blessed be the name of the Lord." And we continue on. The assault isn't over. Satan's second assault, health gone. Chapter 2, verse 1, book of Job. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where do you come?" Satan answered the Lord and said, "From going to and fro on the earth and walking back and forth on it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil? And he still holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause." So Satan answered the Lord and said, "Skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took apart himself a potsherd, and he took himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Job and his wife speak. This is this next section. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he said to her, "You speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity?" And all this, Job did not sin with his lips. In this next section, Job and his 3 friends seen the ash heap outside an oriental village. Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. For they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him, and to comfort him. And when they raised their eyes from afar and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept. And each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head toward heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was very great. That's the end of chapter 2. So, I'm going to break this down section by section. You know, Job has had a lot hit him all at once. He's lost, go back to chapter 1, read you what he lost. 7 sons and 3 daughters, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 1,000 ox, 500 female donkeys, and a very large household. He lost all of that in a day. And then, after it's all said and done, he still says, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. This wasn't good enough. Satan still hadn't corrupted Job. He hadn't made good on his promise to God. He's like, I got to do something else. Again, there was a day when the sons of God, meaning the angels, came to present themselves before the Lord in heaven at the throne. And Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and walking back and forth on it. Satan walking the earth till to this day, Jack. It isn't just in the book of Job. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job, that there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil, and still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. He still calls Job his servant because Job has not yet cursed God, has not turned from God no matter the adversity that he's faced, the bad times. I mean, the man lost all his livestock, he lost all 10 of his children in his household. They are all dead or stolen away by other tribes and nations. All his servants except for 4 were killed. And those 4 were the ones that came and give the return that, all your stuff's gone, dude. You'd think any staunch Christian in modern day, they'd crumble. But yet, God still says he is a blameless and upright man who fears me. And he shuns evil. And still he holds fast to his integrity. A man is known by his integrity, where he's not saying one thing and doing the complete opposite. Although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. Satan told him, he said, watch him, you take everything from him and watch him curse you to your face. Job stuck to his guns. So Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. Or Satan thinks he's got one over on God. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. Basically saying, curse his body, make him sick, make his health disappear, put him down worse. Because I know whenever I get sick, I feel pretty down, even with the head cold. And the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. Basically, he's saying, do what you got to do. But don't kill him. Because trust me, Satan has the power to kill him. But God is ruler of all, even Satan. And Satan still answers to God, even though he does not dwell in heaven after he rebelled and he was cast to earth. You still got to follow the rules, Jack. So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. That's a lot of skin cover. From the very bottom of your foot, from the very bottom of your feet to the very top of your head. Boils are very, very painful. If you've ever seen, Dr. Pimple Popper, and you see some of these abscesses that well up and they are very dark, like purplish red. because people are in so much pain from the pressure. Imagine your whole body covered in a bunch of those things from head to toe, not just in one spot. One spot hurts enough. I've had a couple of them myself. But imagine just being covered in these things from your tops of your head to the sole of your feet. That's not going to be very pleasant. And he took himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. These things itch like crazy. And I looked it up this morning before I started my study because I was like, what's a potsherd? And he scraped himself. It's just a piece of pottery, broken pottery. And he was probably lancing them boils to get them to drain so that way he wouldn't be in so much pain and the itching and everything and wiping away all that pus that was coming out of him. You know, he like that with that potsherd because, I mean, those suckers itch. But also he's using that potsherd to lance those things so that way the pressure could go away where he's not in so much pain. But then his wife, I mean, who was struck with grief, and she's lost everything. But I believe, honestly, from what I've read, and I believe in my own heart, is that Job's wife wasn't really faithful to God. She's trying to get Job to curse God and, you know, die because instead of being in a state of grief, constant grief. It says, then his wife said to him, do you still hold fast to your integrity? Curse God and die. What kind of spouse is that? You know, you have here before you a man of God, blameless, upright, fears God, and shuns all evil. But yet you go and you lose everything, and boy, you go all to pieces. What kind of a spouse is that? Not something I'd want in my marriage. And she being a fool. Job calls her on it, like any good husband should. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish women speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? And in all this, Job did not sin with his lips. You know, you're going to be up on that mountain. You're going to be like, this looks pretty cool. I like it up here. But you got to keep on going. And you're going to be back down that valley. And the valleys, they get hot. I mean, literally, out where I don't live anywhere where there's mountains and valleys. But out there on my property, my family's property on our ranch, we have a lot of open hills and open plains, but we also have creek bottoms that you'll go down, not deep, but deep enough that, especially in the summertime, like it is now, you're wearing the air, as the saying goes. The humidity down there sucks. And trust me, it's easier to walk downhill than walk uphill. We have to go and face these times of adversity, otherwise our faith would dwindle. And, you know, if anything, this was a integrity and faith building moment for Job. And he was so fine-tuned with God that he realized this. He says, shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? You know, God controls all things. But he will send hurdles your way to go and test your faith, I believe. And to see how strong your faith is in him, to see if you truly do love him. You know, it was just like how it was with my grandfather, like I talked about yesterday, and my daughter. Those were big times of adversity for me, where you know, you'd think that a strongest Christian, their faith would shatter. I still said, Lord, make me like Job. Give adversity to me. I'm still going to praise your holy name in the fire no matter what. Now, when Job's 3 friends heard all of this adversity that had come upon him, each one came from his own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come and mourn with him and to comfort him. Job is still mourning the loss of his children. That's the reason he shaved his head, tore his robe, covered himself in ashes. He would go, and that was Jewish tradition, to shave your one's head and cover yourself with ashes. That was a sign of being humble and in mourning in the Jewish nation. And that just cover yourself in ash, that's a sign of mourning. So these 3 friends of Job's, they were going to come and be there with him and help him bear his burden to mourn the loss of his family. And when they raised their eyes from afar and did not recognize him, they lifted their voices and wept. And each one tore his robe and sprinkled dust on his head towards heaven. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was very great. They didn't recognize the man that they knew. He had gone and shaved his head. He's stricken with boils. Probably there's some of them are scarring at this point. Covered in blood, mud, poop, ash, dirt. His own tears streaking his face. They didn't recognize the man that Job was. Job was stricken with grief. You lose your family and everything you own in one day, and then the next day, your health fails. That would drive any man to scream, lose his mind. I believe Job did lose his mind, but he held on to a little bit enough of his sanity to not curse the Lord and die. But those 3 men, they didn't recognize him. And they lifted their voices up and they cried out. And each one tore his robe, sprinkled dust on his head toward heaven. Another signing of mourning. So they sat down with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. And no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his grief was great. Sometimes whenever you're in grief, you don't want to talk. You just want to sit in silence. It's how my mother was when my grandfather passed away here last year. She didn't hardly talk for about 3 or 4 days. I'm going to go over my footnotes. And if you want to write these down, go and look into them yourself, go right ahead. Because this isn't the first time or the only time that Satan has appeared in the appearances of Satan and spirits in the Bible. Satan disguised as a snake tempts Eve, Genesis 3:1 and 6:15. An evil spirit sent to Amalek, Judges 9:23. An evil spirit comes to Saul, 1 Samuel 16:14 through 15 and 19, verse 9. Saul visits the witch of Endor, 1 Samuel 28:13. Lying spirits dwell in false prophets, 1 Kings 22:23. Satan inspires David, 1 Chronicles 21:1. Satan tempts Jesus, Matthew 4, verses 1 through 11. Jesus casts out an evil spirit, Matthew 8:16, Mark 1, verse 23 through 27. Satan enters Judas, Luke 22:3. Satan appears, sometimes possesses, sometimes he tempts. Down here in the footnotes regarding the 3 men, Eliphaz, to whom God is strength, one of God's 3 friends who debated with him about God. Bildad, son of contention, one of Job's three friends. His counsel was based on tradition. Zophar, which means chatters, one of Job's three friends. His counsel showed a legalistic view of God. We'll get into that later on. But yeah, this continues on with the trial of Job, the mess of Job, the test of Job's faith. It's like I say, every test becomes a testimony and the mess becomes a message. We're just getting started, folks. Join me tomorrow for chapter 3.